I think for today I'll be sharing about two things. The first is what my company does, Hedge. We work with a lot of very, very long words like employability. And I think it's something that we struggle with sometimes ourselves. So for Hedge, I guess it does tie in with both the themes of future of work and support for vulnerable groups. I'll share that a little bit more later. And the second thing I want to share about is also like, as a young person myself, trying to navigate kind of identity, who am I, what do I want to do, and also relevance, right? Like what is it that I want to use the skills that I have for? So that's going to be the second part of my sharing. So yeah, jumping to the first part, very briefly sharing about the journey of Edge. The first thing that I'd like to share is, when we started, what is it exactly that we wanted to solve? I think a lot of you here are quite young, so you might relate quite clearly that Singapore is very, very qualifications driven. A lot of times, depending on the qualifications you have, you get put into boxes, right? And on the jobs side of things, we have this mindset, or at the very, very least, our parents have this very fixed mindset that this is a degree job, this is a diploma job, this is some other job. And I think when we started, what we felt was that it's not just that it's not great, it's also not very true, because ultimately what determines whether somebody does well in a job is things like, is there a fit in the skills, is there a fit in the culture, and how do you actually translate, how do you actually make that happen, right? It's a bit hard, because everybody's mindset is like, okay, degree, diploma, etc. But fundamentally at the same time, there is some hope that, especially with what Brian was sharing, that there is a shortened gap between skills and jobs. So when you're also looking at emerging jobs, you can actually find ways to quickly prepare somebody for a certain job. So that's kind of the intersection between problem and opportunity, which is where kind of, for Hedge, is where digital and design came in. We started to realize that things like digital marketing, user interface, user experience design, these were areas that, there just wasn't any qualifications that were there at that point in time, right? And, if we, why not give it a try, right? And I guess this is also kind of the part where the support for vulnerable groups come in. I was kind of looking at the different types of youth programs that were out there. And one of the things that I saw was that in Singapore, if you kind of dropped out from the mainstream education system, if you drop out, and if your family don't have a lot of resources, like basically a lot of rich, the career options available for you is very, very limited. Very, very, a lot of times it's a lot of gig economy jobs, vocational, etc., which are not bad in themselves, but I think what I believe in is that every young person should have the means to choose what he or she wants. And if they want digital and design, then they should have the option. So yeah, I think the last part, prototype and testing. I hear that you guys are doing some prototyping today. I think this is something that you will keep hearing here and there, but basically, with the idea that we had, we just gave it a try. Basically, we were running a train and place model, that whatever skill set that you're trying to prepare the person for, put it into, some people call it boot camp, but it doesn't really matter, put it into a very condensed, well-curated curriculum, quickly train the person, match the person to the job, and let the person continue developing from there. So with like multiple rounds of prototyping and testing, our first cohort, I just had like 3 youths. Right now we run about programs for about 150 students a year. These are kind of the 3 things that we really, really believe in. So here to help, audience focus and bespoke, and experts in digital and design. I think that for the purpose of today, you guys are not trying to create another company in this area, so don't need to go too much. There's no need to go too much into it, but if you're really interested, you can go to our website and find out more. I guess the relevance here is that oftentimes the differentiation of what you want to do is quite closely tied to the organization that you want to create. So for us, a lot of things that we are known for, say being able to work with groups that no one else can as well work for, a lot of times ties back to our values, that we want to make sure that whatever programs that we design don't just work for the people who are easy to train, it don't just work for the people with the means to pay, but it fundamentally has to work for very diverse groups. So yeah, this is just an outline of the services. We have the academy side, which does different levels of training. Immersives are kind of that train and place kind of model. Accelerator is kind of a bit shorter, direct verticals, and customized programs, which I will go more into later. Mediahouse is kind of our in-house digital and design agency. So you can see that for here we work with learners, here we work with companies. Oftentimes, especially with COVID, there's actually a lot of SMEs that are just not able to switch online very fast. And a lot of times it's about really going down and having that, really wanting to help them to bring their services online. So that's something that we do, and you can see that there's actually kind of a synergy there that a lot of the graduates from Academy can actually take out freelance opportunities with Mediahouse. So yeah, I guess just a very, very short idea of like a typical student who comes through Hatch. Ultimately, we are very focused on them having application-based learning from the get-go. So we are working on real projects. At the graduation of every program, the students go through a problem statement that is given by an actual company. And ultimately, this makes it very real, and this also becomes very, very good projects they can put in their portfolio, which companies would then use to hire for. Yeah. Actually, these are just classroom photos. I think that ultimately, a lot of times people ask us, like, what's the innovation in what we do? I think a lot of times people think of innovation as like some tech thing, AI. I do think that those are innovation, but I think fundamentally what we see in the gap in learning, quality learning is not valued enough. And for Hatch, this is something that we really care about, that we design good curriculum, we find good people who not just have the skills, but also the heart to teach. And it works. So yeah, I guess moving on to the second part of the sharing, as a young person myself, I think these might be some things that could be useful for you guys. Why Hatch? For me, a lot of times, and this is kind of why I usually like to share more about the Hatch part first before the personal side, that in a lot of startups you see that there is this very inspirational founder story. So when Hatch first started, we were the people who work with at-risk youth, and everybody's like, hey, are you a youth at risk yourself? No, it's not true. But I think what is true, and I dig within, is that oftentimes the decisions that I make actually ties in a lot with the values and beliefs that I have. So the most authentic reason on why I started Hatch was because it ties in with my beliefs that quality education should be something that is freely available, it should be accessible to everybody. And I kind of just wanted to make that happen. Right. The second bit is usually, if you're a bit older, usually what you do is things that you are experts at. I started Hatch when I was about 22. At that age, you're usually not an expert at everything. But to me, the fields of digital, business, and social innovation were things that I wasn't afraid of. So I may not be good at it, but it doesn't scare me. So that was kind of why Hatch was kind of becomes the intersection of these three. And I think lastly, apart from starting, right, you kind of have to continue over time. For me, I think it's a very, very interpersonal kind of experience, seeing the difference that Hatch has on the learners and the organizations that we help. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's really what keeps a lot of my team and myself going. Yeah, business and social impact. So I get asked this question a lot because everyone thinks that for social enterprises, you will never make money and survive. If you guys are in your own projects, you're looking at areas of sustainability. If you're looking at areas of financial sustainability, this might be one thing to think about, that oftentimes people see business and impact as like very trade-off kind of idea, right? You want to do good, you cannot make money. You want to make money, you cannot do good. I actually do think that there is quite some truth in it, but it's not the only way to think about it. Sometimes if you just think of it as like two different dimensions, right? There are some projects that can make money, some projects that can do good. And actually, if you know how to work this out, if you've been in the space for long enough, you actually start to map out like what are the areas where there are both business and impact. This tends to be a bit more contextual, which does come after working on like your individual projects for a while. Yeah, but I think to me, what is relevant for you guys might be to really like just consider that it might look something like the concept on the right rather than the one on the left. Yeah, so how do you actually find that area? I think for Hatch, here are some 3 things that we found very, very helpful. So the first is being authentic to who you are and the impact that you want to achieve. A lot of times, I think some social enterprises, you start out with this mission, then you realize that you need to do something else to make money, and then you kind of shift to the part to make money, and after a while it doesn't get as exciting anymore. I do think that sometimes you just got to be very, very intentional about what is it that you're trying to do. It's okay to do something else, but you ultimately have to answer to yourself. Yeah, which I guess I touched on a bit on the second point. And lastly, if you're looking at any kinds of work in the area of innovation, not just in social innovation, but any kind of innovation, is that you will always be working on something novel that people might not understand. Most of the people might not even believe in you. Sometimes I think it's one of the biggest skills is being able to differentiate, when people give you feedback, what is the feedback you should take and what is one you shouldn't. It's a bit hard for somebody to tell you how, but I think over time, if you stay authentic, you will figure out that along the way. And it is really quite important to not give up in the process. Yeah, closing thought, I guess this is a little bit more of a reflective journey for me also. So I think that very, very important thing to remember, especially if you're thinking about the future of work and how it's not so straightforward. The path is not, and it's never meant to be very, very linear. If I think about what I wanted to be when I was younger, I wanted to be an interior designer. Because when my parents were renovating houses, I was like to draw out the room layout, the doors, and trying to see. And fundamentally, I really enjoyed it when certain layouts made a lot more sense than the others. When I was a bit older, I wanted to be a doctor because I think that it will allow me to make a very, very direct impact on the lives of others. You can see that this idea of impact actually didn't come in already. Eventually I didn't. So I mean, a large part is that I didn't make it into the medical school that I wanted to go. And so I guess sometimes it's also like the constraints that you have that helps to guide your life. Eventually I studied this thing called quantitative finance, which is like math and finance together, which was something that I realized I was good at. So things that are conceptual, analytical, and abstract. So it does look like very, very different things. Like Steve Jobs in his commandment, he say that the dots connect backwards. Sometimes it's not the point of seeing how the dots connect, it's just thinking back and having the identity. So if we see eventually, if I think back about the work that I currently do now, there is that element of design and creation in entrepreneurship. I think about making a direct difference to the lives of others is very, very strong in what I do now. And ultimately, it has to be things that I'm good at. We have 3 co-founders in Hatch. So for myself, the CEO role usually has a bit more of that strategic, analytical, and financial aspect to it, which are kind of things that I'm kind of a little bit more inclined towards. So yeah, do connect the dots eventually. I think that if you guys are trying to figure that out, sometimes I think hearing that inner voice and learning when to trust it is very, very important. So yeah, I think that's the end of my sharing. I titled it What I Think About When I Think About Impact. This is a personal, my personal answer to it is that in Hatch it's a lot about working with people, it's a lot about diversity, and it's a lot about helping people grow. So that's why it is for me, and I do hope that over the course of this program, you guys figure out what that is.